Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is the first video on the graph database series. We will explore together how graph databases differ from relational databases, why Neo4j is a game changer and a real world use cases where the Neo4j is being applied. By the end of this video, we will understand why graph databases are flexible, scalable and powerful for modern data driven applications. So let's get started. So the first question which comes into our mind is what is graph database? So unlike traditional relational databases that store data in the form of a table, rows and columns, graph database store data in the form of nodes and relationship. So it gives us a more kind of a natural structure. So when we talk about graph database, there are three things which we have to keep in mind. The first thing is the nodes. Basically, nodes represents the entities. For example, a customer's product, transaction, order. So these can be considered as the nodes. Then we have the edges. So edges here talks about the relationship between the different nodes, like how they're connected. Like it can be something like as purchased, friend with, or connected to something like that. Okay. Then we have something called as properties. So properties are basically the additional details about both node and relationship. So, one of the biggest advantage of graph database is that the structure allows the database to be more flexible and scalable. It represents the more complex data in the complex data in a much more easier way, and it helps us in handling the complex and evolving data set. It is very good from the performance perspective, which makes it more flexible and scalable. Now, the next thing is we'll see the difference between Neo4j and the relational database. So the first thing here is when we talk about the data model, Neo4j, it shows in the form of a nodes and relationship. The data is represented in the form of nodes and relationship. But when we talk about the relational database, it is in the form of a table and rows. Now, when we talk about the querying, so when we do the query to get a desired output, in the case of a Neo4j, it goes to the traverse towards the graph and get the desired output. But in the case of a relational database, we go for the SQL queries. In Neo4j, the relationship is being explicitly modeled, but in the case of relational database, it's been described in the form of described through the foreign keys. Now, the query language which we use in Neo4j is the CQL, which is the cipher query languages. There's a typo here. This cipher query language should be here. And in the case of relational database, it should be SQL. So there's a mismatch here. By mistake, I have done some typo mistake. So please ignore it. But for Neo4j, it's the cipher query language. And for relational database, it's the SQL. Now, next comes the performance. So when we talk about the performance, Neo4j are very fast. When we try to do any kind of a query, it is much more faster as compared to the relational database. Neo4j is a schema free, so we don't need to define any schema when trying to build the Neo4j graph. But in relationship databases, it is schema dependent. We need to specify the schema. Next thing is this is an example of an SQL database. So you can see here, I have taken this from an e-commerce data. So we have the customer table or entity, or product table or entity, or order table or entity, and they have the following columns. Okay, and these all tables are related to each other. Either it can be a one-to-one mapping, one-to-many mapping, all kind of different relationship. It can happen. So this is a more simple form of representing an SQL database, which contains the data in the form of a table, columns, rows. Next thing is the Neo4j database is in the form of a kind of a graph-like structure. So you can see here, I have taken a data for the employee in a particular organization, and trying to create a graph about what kind of work they do, or what kind of teams in which they are in which they are being mapped into. So employee can be a part of the finance, HR, marketing, IT. IT can be also further into a development, maintenance, testing. Then marketing can be market R&D, advertisement, social media. HR can be in the compensation or recruitment. Then we have the finance with where some team will be handling the budget, investment. So like this way, it's in the form of a graph-like structure where there are nodes or entities. You can see here these are the nodes, okay, and then these arrows are showing the relationship between them. So this is the structure of a Neo4j database. Next thing is the Neo4j use cases in action. So Neo4j is like it can be used in network analysis. It helps us in understanding connections between people, businesses, or devices. For example, social networks like LinkedIn or Facebook. And then we have the recommendation system. So it suggests the product, movies, or friends based upon the user behavior. For example, in the case of Amazon and Netflix, it can be used in fraud detection, identifying suspicious activities by detecting hidden connection in financial transaction. Um, in master data management, combining and managing data from multiple sources to give us a unified views. Next thing is the benefits of Neo4j. So Neo4j, as we have already seen, it can quickly navigate through millions of relationship in the graph. So scalability, it can handle large scale data without performance drop. Then it's also very much flexible, adapt to changing business needs without modifying the schema because it's a schema free. For example, we can think about a global bank which is using a Neo4j database, and it has to do a fraud detection. So it can process thousands of transactions in real time, identifying suspicious pattern 100 times faster than the traditional databases. Now, next thing is before we wrap up, some of the key takeaways which we have to remember is graph database are very powerful tools for modeling and querying connected data. Neo4j is the leading graph database, which has a very rich feature set. And in this series, we are going to deep dive into the Neo4j. What are the syntaxes of the cipher query languages? Then one of the biggest advantage of Neo4j or the graph database is in the performance, scalability, and the flexibility. So please let me know if you have any questions regarding this in the comment section. And thanks for watching this video.